Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Agent's Edge. My name is Ryan Palomini. Today we're going to talk about some tips to master your seminars. Now, earlier today, I was coaching one of our advisors that works with my firm, Top Rank Advisors, and we were discussing he's got two workshops coming up. And I was going through and asking him what his topic was and some of the things he was going to talk about. And I very quickly realized that a lot of advisors or insurance agents who do seminars, they all make very common mistakes. And I don't have the whole time to go into all the things you should do in a seminar, but here's a few things that you should focus on. And this is exactly what I said to him. So I'm going to give you what I coached one of my advisors on today. I said to him, all right, so tell me some of your topics. What are some of the things you're going to talk about? He's like, well, I got this PowerPoint presentation. I was like, all right, here we go, right? And he was going through some of the things. And it was a very basic, retirement planning type of workshop. And I said, okay, hold on, Chris. His name was Chris. I said, hold on, Chris. What are the hot buttons that you're going to hit on? Because here's the question I have for you. Why you? Why is someone who's going to listen to your workshop going to work with you versus going to the same thing at the next store over, right? What are you going to do to be different? Meaning, you could go through PowerPoints and you can hit a little bit on everything, which again, I still not a big fan of that. But let me give you something that you have to do, because this is through trial and error where I've made a lot of mistakes, especially early on when I was doing seminars, is just going through the boring, mundane parts of, the start of the workshop. Now, as you do more and more workshops, one thing you're going to realize, and this is something, here's tip number one, is you need to ask a lot of questions. I know it's contrary to what a lot of people think, but here's why you have to do this. If you go through 45 minutes of just verbal vomit, right, which is what most people do, they just throw up the information, or they're reading like a robot off their slides. They've got their clicker, the slides behind them, they have their back turned to the audience most of the time, right, reading a slide. This is what Social Security does. This is here. Your job is to get the attention of your audience fast, very fast, because if not, you're going to lose them quickly. So what I like to do is I like to ask questions up front. So here's an example. We were talking about the things he was going to talk about, and I said, Chris, dude, that's way too basic. I don't care if you intro yourself, but the question should be on things like taxes, on things like the economy, the market crashing. These are things to get people thinking very, very quickly, to kind of not makes people nervous, but nervous enough that you capture their attention quickly. And so I asked Chris to say this, that when you start your workshop, I told Chris to say this. When you start your workshop, what I want you to do is start off by asking people how many people are familiar with the most important 4-year window of the rest of their lives. Raise your hand. And they're, what? Why? Because everybody in this room, or everybody in your room, is there to learn about retirement planning, which is so broad and generic. But here's what I said, Chris. Here's how I want you to start your workshop. I want it just to be a slap, right? I want it to be a slap. And what I mean by that is you have to get their attention quickly. So here's what I need you to say. Everybody in the room, before we get started, I want you to write this down. Because remember, workshops are also all about control, meaning it's okay to ask questions as long as you keep control of the room. Because all too often, we allow the person that there's always one, the person in the back of the room that knows everything about everything, that's going to try to interrupt your meeting as much as possible. And you have to be prepared for that, but you have to be able to ask good questions, answer it, and move on. So here's what I'm talking about. I said to him from the very beginning, you have to establish what I call basically authority over the room, meaning this. You ask a question and you tell them to write something down right from the very beginning. And it sets the precedence for your entire workshop. So here's how I would start. Everybody, thanks so much for attending. Listen, before we get started, I want you all to write this down, because this is one of the most important things I'm going to tell you all night long. And I'm not the kind of guy that's going to be up here and just give you a bunch of information. I'm going to tell you when to take notes. And this is going to be one of those times. So do me a favor, write this down. Think about that. All of a sudden, people are screaming now. People are scrambling to grab their pens. They're like, what the heck is going on, right? And so you have control, and it's different. And I would write this down. Taxes are the foundation of every financial plan. Let me say it again, folks. Taxes are the foundation of every financial plan. Now, think about what just happened. They're there for a retirement workshop, and you just hit them with taxes. And if you can get that into their head, that taxes are the foundation of every retirement plan or financial plan, which it is, and if you're not talking taxes, you are insane. I'm sorry. If you are in our business and you're doing retirement planning and you are not talking taxes, you are insane, because you're missing out on a huge opportunity to land much bigger clientele and to do a lot more planning. But anyways, think about that for a second. You just set the tone. Why? Because from this point forward, anything you talk about, you're going to relate back to it. And you can always say, folks, let me ask you a question here. What is the foundation of every retirement plan? Taxes. That's right. Let me tell you where taxes are going to affect you. When we go through this workshop today, we're going to talk about things like how taxes affect your required minimum distribution, how that could really knock you off your target in your later years. How many of you don't like surprises? Raise your hand. How many of you would rather know today if you're going to run out of money versus when you run out of money? Raise your hand. Let me ask everybody a question. How much money in this economy, and all of you getting ready to retire, can you afford to lose and feel comfortable with it? Raise your hand if you're okay with losing any money. Right? You start looking around the room. You're asking questions because what you're doing is you're getting people to start thinking about, wow, okay, hold on. I got to pay attention to what this guy or what this lady's saying, because there's something to this, because all the questions he or she just asked, I'm already petrified with, right? So again, you lay the foundation from the very beginning, because once you capture their attention, they're going to listen to you. Here's the other thing I'm going to tell you. When you're doing PowerPoint presentations, you do not have to have paragraphs on the PowerPoint. No paragraphs, bullet points only. You know, I was telling the advisor I was coaching, I said, look, there's some PowerPoints where I have a page and it's got one bullet point with one line or even one word, and I'll spend 10 minutes on that slide. I got a lot to say. But here's what it tells the audience. You know what you're talking about. If I don't have to go up here and read stats and statements, it shows that I know what I'm talking about. Because they're not going to care about that. They're going to hear what I'm saying, and they're going to be engaged in the information that I have to give. You know, here's another stat that I was telling you. When you get to Social Security, because right, you talk about holistic planning, and I think that's important as you do workshops to tell people you do holistic planning on all things like taxes, Social Security, income, estate planning, wealth management if you do it, so on and so forth. But I like throwing stats out there. I like asking questions. Let me ask everybody a question here while we're talking about Social Security. How many of you know that in the last DI report that Social Security just gave out, they said that they're only solvent enough to pay dollar for dollar on Social Security to 2033. After that, they can only pay 78 cents on the dollar. That's a 22% reduction. Folks, let me ask you a question. How many of you have a game plan today to fill that 22% gap in 11 years from now? Raise your hand. We look around the room. Nobody has their hand raised. How many of you think that's a concern? In 11 years, some of you are going to be in your 70s. How would you factor that in? Where's the money going to come from? And by the way, let me ask you a question. How are you going to be able to do that and not run out of money? You see, folks, can you understand now why it is so important now for you to get a plan built for you today and talk about and look into the future? Because we could talk all day long today about, growing your money. Look, you're all pretty smart. You could probably open an online account and do that yourself. But what about all the other things like taxes, like all these things coming down the pipeline that could knock you off your retirement? Wouldn't you want to know that ahead of time or when it happens? You see, I've got the room now. I've got the room so engaged in what I'm saying. I've got them thinking, man, I didn't even know that. If they have a financial advisor and you say something like that, Now, when they come sit down with you one-on-one, you can ask them, what is your financial advisor's plan for filling that 22% gap that you're going to have in income, right? Because looking at it, 70% of your fixed income in retirement is going to be from Social Security. If they take away 22% of that, what are you going to do to fill that gap? Have you and your financial advisor talked about that? You have not. Do you see how that could be some cause of concern? What's their game plan for keeping you solvent and not run out of money in retirement? When do you think it's a good time to talk about that? Folks, there's so many more things. Again, I know a lot of you have asked me, and we're probably going to do an entire workshop on how to do a workshop, how to do a seminar. But I wanted to talk about this because as I coach more and more people, and as seminars kind of come back in, the live seminars, how they kind of come back into a lot of people's marketing plans, and maybe some of you are going to use that going into next year. I wanted just to drop this in because it was on my mind. I was coaching someone on it this morning. I have not done a personal, like a live seminar in a long time. I still do everything virtually and webinar based, but it's kind of getting me back in the mood to want to go out and do it again. But for those of you that are, or maybe you're considering it, take what I'm telling you and apply it. It's very simple. You have to be always in control when it comes to a seminar because the minute you lose the room, it makes it much, much more difficult. So I hope it's been helpful for you. It's a very fun topic for me. I love teaching on this stuff. If there's anything I could do to help, please feel free to reach out. Let us know if this has been helpful for you. Hit me with a comment below. As a matter of fact, do this for me. Tell me what your best workshop was. In the comments below, tell me what the topic was and why you felt great doing it. I'd love to hear from it. We love to hear from everybody that watches our content. We appreciate you watching as always. If you like this, hit the like button. Hit that subscribe button if you have not yet. Do it. We appreciate it. Leave us a comment below. We'll see you on the next episode.